friends, it's Lex at LexReads, and today we're going to be talking about my favorite podcasts. So, podcasts are one of my favorite entertainment mediums. I listen to a good handful. I want to do another video on my favorite, bookish podcasts. This is not that video. These are just my favorite podcasts to listen to. So this is I want to do a IREC 5 series, and I'm starting my series with podcasts, which is probably a weird thing to start with, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I have 5 and an honorable mention, so let's do it. I'm going to start with the honorable mention. My honorable mention for my top 5 podcast recommendations is called The Film Reroll. So if you, like me, are a fan of RPGs, which is role-playing games, so things like Dungeons & Dragons, this is not a Dungeons & Dragons podcast, but what they do is their GM, their game master, sits down and writes out, they're essentially like one-shots, but they write out one-shots of films, and they play a tabletop role-playing game to try and make the film happen. But of course, when you're in a murder mystery and you're like, I want to examine the room. Okay, make an intuition check. So you roll, and you roll a 2, and they're like, that's a nice room. Where in the movie they notice a big clue, so you're just missing that. And my favorite episode is, I think it was Friday the 13th or something. It was a horror film, but he told them all that they were playing this wacky 80s coming of age comedy in the vein of The Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, that kind of movie, so that they weren't expecting it to be a horror movie, which is kind of how horror movies work, we're going on spring break, but everyone's gonna die, that kind of thing. So they did a slasher film where they didn't know it was a slasher film. And that's my favorite episode. It was really good. Highly recommend. These also aren't in an order, these 5. So we're moving into my top 5 podcast recommendations. We're just gonna keep with the RPG trend. This is my other, there's only 2, I promise, tabletop RPG podcasts. I recommend to you Join the Party, which is a podcast produced by Multitude Productions, which is my favorite podcasting collective. I listen to almost every podcast that they produce. But this is about 4 friends doing a game of Dungeons and Dragons, but it's got a little bit of a sci-fi element. They it's Dungeons and Dragons, but not the most traditional Dungeons and Dragons that has ever happened. It's arguably my favorite podcast. It's not the one that I listen to the most because I have to very consciously pay attention to it, or I miss important storyline things, which is not ideal. Game Master, Dungeon Master, Eric, 3 constant players. They invite people to come in and voice NPCs. They have different storylines. It's very well done. It's half Dungeons and Dragons, half audio drama. The production value is insane. It's so beautifully edited. And you don't need to know anything about Dungeons and Dragons to listen to it, because at the beginning they go through and they explain how everything works. They have a track for newbies and a track for seasoned players, so you can choose your own adventure, so that you can figure out what's going on alongside them. It's really good. Highly recommend. All of my podcasts are geeky, so I hope you're expecting that. The next podcast I have to recommend to you is the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast. If you like Marvel as much as I do, I'm a huge Marvel nerd. I'm an epic Marvel nerd. I just realized I didn't change my shirt. I'm filming like 5 videos today. There's another video that'll come up later, I think in February, where I'm also going to look like this. They just talk about Marvel. They talk about all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff. So they talk about the Netflix series, they talk about all of the movies, they do, like, my favorite things that they do aren't actually when they sit down and, like, we're talking about Iron Man 2. It's when they sit down and sometimes they'll do, like, who is the strongest Avenger? And they, like both of them, like, make lists and they sit down and they compare lists and it's, like, really meta and really geeky. And I'm obsessed with it, so definitely go give it a listen. The next podcast I'm going to recommend to you guys is No Such Thing as a Fish. This is about, 4 co-workers from QI. It's British. It's a game show, QI, whatever, I don't know. But they sit down every week with their 4, like each of them brings a favorite, like, random fact of the week, and then they go through the facts one by one, and they, like, send each other their facts a little bit early, and they find, like, related fun facts. It's literally just an info dump of weird facts, and I adore it. It was the first podcast that I ever actively started listening to, and it holds a very special place in my heart, and I think every single one of you should go and listen. Another podcast that I'm obsessed with is Lessons from the Screenplays podcast. If you like the Lessons from the Screenplay YouTube channel, it's the same team, and they just sit down and talk about films. One of my favorite episodes, they have an episode on Inside Out where they, like, really delve into Inside Out and, like, narrative structure and formatting your screenplay, and it's so good. If you like movies at all, I highly, highly, highly recommend you give it a listen. They have screenwriters on to talk about their screenplays. They dissect screenplays. If you want more depth to any of their YouTube videos, say you watched The Devil Wears Prada YouTube video, it's like 10 minutes, and you're like, yeah, I wish they gave me more. Ooh, I have hiccups. If you watched one of their videos and wanted more, the podcast is the place to get that, because I think they have a podcast episode for every YouTube video that they do, where they go, like, double depth into the podcast. Into the video. Super good. Highly recommend. 10 out of 10. Listen. And my top podcast that I'm recommending is Bookish. It's Bookish, I promise. It's Potterless, which is a Harry Potter podcast about Mike Schubert, who is I think when he started he was 24 or 25. By the end he was 26 or 27. A 24-year-old man reading Harry Potter for the first time. And every week he has on a guest, and they talk about Harry Potter, and they, like, read chunks of the books. He finished all the books. He's finished the movies, I believe. I haven't listened in a couple months, so I don't know exactly where he's at, but all of the books are out, so... And those are really... I didn't like the movies as much as I liked the books, but Shubes is hilarious. If you love Harry Potter and aren't a fan of Quidditch, this is, like, the perfect place for you to listen and chat about Harry Potter. It's so good. Alright, friends, so those are my IREC 5 podcasts. I'll probably do some more, because like I said, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I also want to do a, like, Bookish podcast recommendation. If you go and check out any of those podcasts, step on and tell them I sent you. Like I said, I've been, like, an active fan of all of these podcasts for a hot minute. Let me know down below what you think. Also, now that you know... My dog is itching herself. Okay. But also, now that you kind of know what kind of podcasts I'm into, be sure to... Really? Be sure to leave me some podcast recommendations down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you very soon. Bye.